Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be exploring a piece about autism and gender identity.
Oh, yeah.
But what's really interesting about this one is it's a first-person account. So
Right.
it's really personal. We get to hear directly from someone who's navigating both the unmasking of their autism and their gender transition.
So we're going kind of deep.
Yeah. So get ready for some pretty powerful insights about being your true self and all that comes with it.
Love it. I think what I'm most fascinated by is how much depth there is to this person's story.
Right.
I mean, we hear about autism and gender identity separately all the time, but this account,
Yeah.
it connects them
Totally.
in a way that shows just how complicated it can be to live with both.
Absolutely. And the author talks about this idea of masking, which,
Yeah.
we've talked about before, but
Yeah.
it's not just the typical way we think about it.
Right.
They describe it as wearing multiple masks, like a double burden of pretending to be someone you're not. So for someone with autism, masking might be, suppressing their natural behaviors and communication styles to fit in.
Right.
But then on top of that,
Like in a neurotypical world.
exactly.
Got it.
Now imagine also having to hide your true gender identity.
Wow. So it's like,
It's a lot.
yeah, it's like carrying this weight around all the time, this
Yeah.
pressure to conform,
Right.
to be what everyone expects. And
Yeah, and the source really gets into how emotionally draining that is.
why is that?
The author talks about the fear of being found out, the constant compartmentalizing,
Yeah.
and even the difficulty expressing emotions because of alexithymia.
Okay, let's break that down a bit.
Yeah, for those who might not know, alexithymia is when someone has trouble identifying and describing their own feelings.
Oh, wow.
And it's pretty common in autism.
I see.
So imagine navigating this whole double mask
Yeah.
situation,
Yeah.
and you can't even fully understand or express the emotional turmoil it's creating.
That's
It's heavy stuff.
really heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes you think about how that affects everyday life, right?
Yeah.
Like if someone's masking both their autism and their gender identity,
Yeah.
how do they connect with other people authentically?
That's a good question.
And how exhausting must it be to constantly think about every word, every action, just to present this version of yourself that
Yeah,
isn't really you?
exactly. And it makes you think, how can we as listeners be more aware of those subtle cues
Yeah.
and create spaces where people feel safe enough to just,
To be themselves.
just be themselves without all the masks?
That's so important.
It's about empathy and understanding.
For sure. And the author's journey of self-discovery is really insightful here.
Tell me more about that.
Well, they talk about how realizing and accepting they were autistic was a huge step towards their gender transition.
Okay.
It was like unmasking one part of themselves gave them the courage to confront the mask of gender conformity.
So like a domino effect?
Kind of, yeah, one act
Oh,
of self-acceptance leading to another.
And I thought it was fascinating how the author describes himself as a gestalt processor.
Gestalt processor.
Yeah, have you heard of that?
I don't think so.
Imagine looking at a painting.
Ah,
You don't immediately see all the brushstrokes, right?
right. You see the whole picture.
Exactly. You see the whole image first. That's gestalt processing.
There, I get it.
It's like experiencing the world as all these interconnected pieces rather than one linear story.
Interesting.
And that way of thinking really affects how the author sees gender identity.
Oh, how so?
They describe transitioning not as becoming someone new, but as integrating all the parts of themselves,
Okay.
autistic, trans, neuroqueer,
Yeah,
into one whole being.
that makes sense.
It's like all these pieces that seem so separate suddenly clicked into place,
Right.
and they form this more authentic sense of self.
I love that.
It's powerful, right?
It is. And I think that phrase, pieces falling into place, is so perfect.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't like an overnight change.
Right.
It was gradual.
It was a process.
Uncovering and embracing those different parts of themselves.
And what's important here is it wasn't about fitting into some box or meeting anyone else's expectations. It was about aligning with their own internal truth,
Their own truth, yeah.
who they truly are at their core.
Exactly. And that brings us to authenticity, which is like the central theme of the author's story.
For sure. And they're very clear that it's not about how you look or following societal norms.
Gotcha.
It's about living in a way that matches your values and beliefs.
regardless of what other people think.
Exactly, and that can be really hard,
Oh, yeah.
especially in a world that's constantly telling us to conform.
For sure.
The author talks about facing hostility, especially as part of the LGBTQIA+ community.
I was going to say.
There's real fear and discrimination,
Sadly.
and it's shaped their experiences.
Yeah, it makes you realize how important it is to create spaces where people feel safe to be themselves.
Absolutely, and, considering they also experience alexithymia,
Oh, right.
it makes those challenges even harder.
Yeah, processing those emotions.
But despite all that, the author has this incredible strength and resilience.
I was just going to say that. Their resilience is amazing.
It really is, and they actually describe their authenticity as an act of resistance.
Interesting.
They're saying that choosing to live openly and honestly, even when it's hard,
Yeah.
is a way to challenge those norms and push for a more inclusive world.
Powerful.
It's like saying, this is who I am and I won't apologize for it,
Love it.
even when the world isn't always accepting.
Right, and that takes courage.
Immense courage, and it connects to this larger point they make about diversity within both the trans and autistic communities.
Yeah.
They don't believe there's one right way to be trans or autistic.
Yeah, I agree.
They celebrate the unique journeys we all take
Yeah, it's beautiful.
in discovering and expressing who we are.
And that's where we find true richness and understanding.
Exactly. So we've talked about masking, unmasking,
Right.
and this powerful idea of integrating different parts of your identity.
Yeah, what a journey.
What resonates most with you so far about the author's experience?
What stands out to me is, I think what really gets to me is how the author talks about their experiences in the workplace.
Yeah.
It's eye-opening to hear about those challenges.
It's like they had to wear a whole other set of masks, right?
Right.
Just to function in spaces that weren't really accepting of neurodiversity or LGBTQIA+ folks.
Exactly. And then the author mentions having to constantly perform these identities that weren't truly theirs.
Yeah.
And it was just to survive.
It's heartbreaking to read about the casual transphobia they encountered and the ableist language.
Those microaggressions that just wear you down.
Absolutely. And don't forget, they're also dealing with alexithymia.
Right, which makes it even harder to process all of that.
Imagine carrying that weight, the fear of being found out.
Yeah.
While also struggling to even understand those complex emotions.
It's a lot.
It really highlights the need for inclusive workplaces.
For sure, places where people feel safe to be themselves.
Without fear of judgment.
Absolutely. And the author's experiences show us that this need for inclusivity goes way beyond work.
Right.
They talk about how the pressure to conform is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
In social settings, personal reflections.
It's like this invisible force trying to squeeze us into boxes that don't fit.
Yes. Trying to silence our authentic voices.
But even with all of that, the author finds so much strength in their journey of unmasking and transitioning.
That's what's so inspiring.
He described it as this profound integration,
Yeah.
bringing all those different parts of themselves together
into a harmonious whole.
It's like they're taking back their story, weaving together all those threads, autism, gender identity, neurodiversity, into this tapestry that truly reflects who they are.
And they use this beautiful metaphor of a mosaic.
I love that.
Where each piece, each experience adds to this bigger, more vibrant work of art.
It reminds us that our identities are not simple.
Right.
They're complex and they're always evolving.
And that evolution often involves uncovering those layers of societal conditioning.
Yeah, peeling them back to reveal the authentic self underneath.
The author specifically mentions how writing has helped them with that.
Oh, interesting.
It's allowed them to explore their identity, make sense of all those different fragments.
Create something meaningful from their experiences.
It's amazing how creative expression can do that.
It really is. It helps us connect with ourselves, process tough emotions.
And find our voice.
Find our voice amidst all the chaos.
And the author's voice is so strong and vulnerable.
I agree.
They challenge those narrow definitions of what it means to be a woman, to be trans.
They embrace their individuality.
All those unique traits and experiences.
Including the ones that don't fit those neat little boxes society tries to put us in.
And I love how they mentioned being 6'7", and a two-time caber tossing champion.
Me too. It's such a great reminder that there's no one right way to express your gender identity.
Authenticity comes in all forms.
Exactly. It's about breaking free from those limitations and embracing the full spectrum of human experience.
And the author's perspective on authenticity as resistance is so insightful.
Tell me more about that.
Well, they're living their truth openly and honestly.
In a world that doesn't always celebrate difference.
And by doing so, they're challenging the norms, pushing back against those forces that try to silence marginalized voices,
And they're honest about the challenges that come with that visibility.
especially in the current political climate,
They talk about the rise in anti-trans sentiment and legislation.
and how that impacts their own sense of safety,
It's a reminder that the fight for equality is ongoing.
and that allyship is crucial.
But even with those challenges, the author still has hope.
That's so important.
They believe in the power of individual stories to create change.
And that's where their message really hits home for me.
Yeah.
It's not just about personal growth.
It's about building a world where everyone feels empowered to be their true selves.
To live openly and honestly, without fear.
They talk about needing safe and supportive spaces.
Communities where people can connect with others who understand.
It makes you think, how can we create those spaces?
In our workplaces, our families, our communities.
It's about fostering belonging, inclusivity.
Where difference is celebrated, not feared.
What a beautiful vision.
It really is. And the author's journey gives us a roadmap.
It shows us the resilience of the human spirit and the power of embracing who you are.
Even when it's hard.
As we head into the final part of our deep dive, I'm curious to hear how the author ties all of this together.
Me too.
Yeah.
How do they envision a future where authenticity thrives, where everyone feels empowered to live openly and honestly?
As we get to the author's final thoughts, I'm really struck by their optimism.
Yeah.
They've been through so much, but there's just this sense of hope and empowerment.
It's incredible, right? And they talk about this like internal shift.
Yeah.
This feeling of wholeness that comes from embracing their true self.
Yeah, it's not about fitting into some external ideal or meeting societal expectations.
It's about that inner alignment.
Exactly. And they say, and I'm quoting here, transitioning has illuminated the beauty of my identity as an autistic trans woman, and unmasking has allowed me to see and embrace the interconnected pieces of who I am.
Wow.
It's beautiful, right?
It really is. It's like they found this hidden treasure within.
Yeah, this radiant complexity they can finally celebrate.
And that celebration really challenges the narrative of shame and secrecy that often surrounds these identities.
For sure.
It's like they're reclaiming their story, their truth.
Absolutely.
And saying, this is me and I'm proud.
It's powerful.
It's an act of defiance or refusal to be silenced.
And it speaks to this bigger point they make about honoring the diversity of experiences within both the trans and autistic communities.
Right.
There's no one right way to be authentic.
Each journey is unique.
And valuable.
Exactly. We're all part of this incredible tapestry.
Yeah.
This vibrant mosaic of human experience.
And it's in that diversity, those unique threads, that we find true richness and understanding.
I love that. And the author leaves us with this really powerful call to action.
Tell me more.
To create a world where authenticity is celebrated, where everyone feels safe and supported to be their true selves without fear of judgment or discrimination.
It's a beautiful vision.
It is, and it reminds us that this work goes beyond individual self-discovery.
Right. It's about challenging systems and structures that create barriers.
Exactly, and building a world where everyone can thrive.
We need to create spaces of belonging and advocate for a more just and equitable world for everyone.
The author asks a crucial question. How can we as individuals and as a society make this vision a reality?
Such a good question.
It starts with small steps, like examining our own biases, creating inclusive environments,
Absolutely.
and amplifying marginalized voices.
We need to listen deeply, learn from each other, and commit to creating a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued for who they are.
This deep dive has been so insightful.
I agree. It's a reminder of the power of self-discovery and the importance of fighting for a world where everyone can be their true selves.
It's been amazing exploring this with you.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Keep these important conversations going and celebrate the power of your own authentic self.